all
They
wars.
haven't thought it through. God damn. All right.
Even in Iraq and Afghanistan, like when they're out, like when it's like they go, they're not like running like mission. I don't know, but they're not running like mission, like where they're on like base, going back and forth between the base. I'm pretty sure they're just in the same clothes. There's no change of clothes.
No.
You're just going from day to day, going from village to village,
Stinking.
speaking broken Arabic.
Yeah.
to
Bullshit Arabic.
to
scared civilians.
or Urdu. Is it Urdu or whatever in Afghanistan?
I know Pakistan is Urdu. I think it might. It's probably parts. Yeah.
Don't hate us, Pakistan. Oh, so too late.
Please.
They already do.
All right.
They already do.
It happened.
Okay.
Know? Hey guys.
No, wow, that's a way to come to an episode. Really coming in hot there. All right, well, guys, you have reached the end of the Cold War package that we did, and we appreciate you guys for sticking around. So, and a lot of them more you than when we started, and we're happy about that. And please tell your friends, like, share, subscribe, all that stuff.
All that.
What we are going to do for this episode is we're just gonna, we've been doing a Cold War package and reading about the Cold War, not particularly, sometimes particularly the Cold War, but also like the histories of nations that were the focal points of the Cold War, and leaders of nations that were the focal points of the Cold War, and decisive places where decisive things happen. And we're just gonna kind of discuss what happened. We kind of just shoot our hot take opinions.
What's it all mean?
What's it all mean?
Shit?
Oh, nothing.
Why is it relevant?
It's over. It doesn't mean anything. No, I'm joking. What if I was like a nihilist like that? No, we're just gonna kind of discuss some key points that we kind of wanted to get back to, wanted to touch on. Yeah. Maybe run through some stories that we might not have gotten to like touch.
Yeah.
And we go and go a little in depth on things, and just a nice way to wrap up this package, which has, and I think the first, if I'm not mistaken, the first question in this thing that we're kind of going to go over is, are we communists now? Am I just, or did I just become a communist by doing it?
I wanted to give a couple corrections.
Okay. Oh,
I watched this shit. It's the Cuba Libre story on Netflix, and it's a very good documentary. It's all in not all in subtitles. Yeah. A lot of it's in subtitles, but it's still very good. So it's just something you need to sit down and watch. And it was about Fidel Castro being released. In the episode, I said that waves of public protests and popular protests just exerted too much pressure on Batista to where he was forced to release Castro. According to the Cuba Libre story, his father-in-law was like a buddy of Batista, and his father-in-law was exerting pressure on him to release Fidel Castro.
Yeah.
It's just a really good documentary. Okay. Also, I mentioned in the Indonesia episode that the PKI had no presence in the Indonesian army. I was speaking more generally than I should have.
Yeah.
The PKI did have a presence in the Indonesian army. However, it was smaller than the dominant conservative bent. Most of the top guys in the Indonesian army were full-fledged conservative, we're going to hold it the fuck down. So there were communists in the Indonesian army, but not a lot.
Henry's fallible. I'm not.
I'm fallible.
I'm not. Mistakes, I don't make mistakes. No, I'm joking.
Josh is perfect.
I've made a lot of mistakes, and we both know it. It's fine. I try my best. That's all.
The pinky up, well, actually, but going back, are we communist?
Are we communist? Oh, are you communist now? Are you communist now? Don't. Henry's an Adam Smith cuck. That's what he is.
I'm more of a not Keynes, man. Who's the guy? I don't know. I'm a FDR guy. I'm a New Dealer.
Okay, you're a New Dealer, so fucking commie associate.
Yeah, man. I'll get behind the Green New Deal too. I'll go as far to I'll extend that olive branch. New Dealer, Green New Dealer, FDR is my guy.
Okay.
Although not entirely. We might cover him later and talk about what a shit he is. But
okay.
What about you?
Am I communist now?
Are you communist? Are you there?
No. So I don't think I'm there yet. And we're only speaking in communism in terms of a general concept, which which is very widely
which we don't even
varies.
completely understand.
Yeah, which is I have not read all the kind of the ideological literature on this stuff. So yeah, but from my, I mean, look, I think I'm definitely a lot less not antagonistic, but like I didn't know what communism was before, and now I've read some of these struggles. I'm like, oh, okay, that's it's not scary. It's not a scary thing. Not that it was scary before. It was not as
meant to be.
Yeah, like
as it's portrayed. Yeah,
some of the layers of like American capitalist like propaganda have been pulled back.
Yeah,
and I mean, a lot of the policy things I think I would be for. I think people would they would on the right, they were definitely like, oh, that you're a communist. And I only thing I gotta say to them is I'm gonna say what Michael Manley said, leader, one of the presidents, prime ministers of Jamaica in the 1970s. Look, if we were communists, we go by communists, and we would announce ourselves as communists on communist principles.
We walk into it.
I would tell you I was a communist.
Yeah,
no, but I'm not. Yeah,
own up to it. Yeah,
I would definitely say, yeah, I'm definitely more left than I probably, probably want to say with the environment as it is.
With all this going on and shit. Is this? Yeah, I guess. What I think is that you don't need to be a full tilt communist to recognize all the fucked up shit that capitalism can entail, or all of the abuses of capitalism, especially foreign abuses of capitalism, to where you don't need to go full tilt communist in order to recognize that those are wrong.
But if
I'm a proponent of regulation. I'm just all about let's rein the shit in.
Yeah, you're
and
reformist.
Then we can kind of get walk the line. Just more of a reformist than a revolutionary is what I want to
that's
get out there. Yeah,
that's Ho Chi Minh had a quote when he was talking about when the early days of like the resistance against the French Empire, French colonialism, when they were like discussing, are we reformists or are we revolutionaries? And in a Confucius sense, a reformist is somebody who corrects the current situation. A revolutionary is somebody who comes in and takes away, replaces the current situation. So I mean, look, I'm a reformist now, but it keeps getting wilder. I'm gonna become a revolutionary, and then I'm gonna go to Jingangshan Mountains. You know what I mean?
You going to China?
I'm going to I'm going to Jingangshan Mountains. I'm gonna left the land, become a bandit.
But you can't disclose where you would go in the States, because then
the Jingangshan Mountains is just a term that I'm using. It's a metaphor for you start allying with bandits. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah, you start raising up the ranks.
We're gonna no cell phones.
No cell phones.
You can't get tracked down. Like, you got to renounce this shit, and
you gotta live off the land. Live
who
off.
Knows where? Yeah.
I think it's definitely. I'm definitely more in tune with the understanding of what was going on in these societies,
and why we wanted to paint them with such a black brush, I guess.
And here's the thing. I think when we, because when you like dive into like the Mao and like the Maoist sensibilities of what happened with China, just it's people call them communists, and they're not even really communist anymore. They're like, now they're just a technocracy.
Yeah,
it's just them, like, it's like they just put people in roles that they're like technically savvy at. I think, from my understanding, there's like they do vote for I am not sure about this. Their government, I'm pretty sure they like either do vote, but it's like very, like, it's only one party, or it's like there are other parties, but it's like, like, it's like one of those where it's just like, I don't know if you guys are kind of doing the thing that you said you were kind of doing. They kind of became a technocracy with a, I would say, oligarchic bent.
Yeah, I was about to say that. That's like the only place you hear about where that is still actually communist of its. They've at least got the hybrid model of it's like, we're part communist, part capitalist. We're kind of making it work, and their economy is fucking exploding right now, and it can't help but.
They're not communist though. They're like, they stopped. I mean, they stopped like really, like they're. I think they're communist in a certain sense, but it's more of like it's state. What I think in the Lumumba book, people keep the guy called it state capitalism. where the
Yeah.
state is basically running itself as a capitalist organization. Like, but it's communist, it's socialist within that still has some socialist principles, but it's like the state is pushing everything and like kind of, but with, you know, as like sub businesses and like, no,
oversight.
it's I don't have enough ideas of what actually the China's so vast
is and what communism looks like. Like I know some countries are more socialist than others, but I don't know what socialism
because it's
entirely entails. I don't know if they're the same thing or if we've just been taught that they are the same thing.
No,
like
what they're doing is they okay, so they're just putting. I think more of it's more just like ideologies that they're just they throw out there, and they're like, oh, these are like magnet poles or magnets or poles or opposite poles of the spectrum or different like ideologies. I think most countries like a lot of countries practice very socialist things, like, and it just depends on what you're talking about in terms of what is socialism and who's getting it, because apparently socialism for the rich is like that's nothing. Like you, I mean, like that's all. That's capitalism. No, that's not capitalism. Capitalism, they would live and die on their own devices with no help, like full tilt, like laissez-faire, free market shit. You wouldn't. You know what I mean? But that's we don't have that. We have in this country. I think we have more of like a little bit of a socialism for the business class.
Socialism, if you can afford it. Almost. Ironically enough,
a socialism you have to pay your way into. And you know what I mean, socialism is a high barrier to entry.
a big bar to fucking vault over.
So I think one thing we wanted to touch back on also was the transition from like the Cold War to the current state of like basically a lot of neocolonial type societies. Because the U.S.
What does that even mean?
Because the U.S. I mean, I would say what happened. The U.S. I'm not the U.S. The U.S. and the West. They won
capitalism. If you want to think of it broadly as that,
capitalism won the Cold War, and in terms of winning it, like, what does that mean? Does it mean like everybody gets like good working jobs and like every place gets paid, like we're all making money and it's fair wages,
get paid enough to live,
every man has his fucking opportunity to make a certain amount of money and stuff? No. What that means is like I think we move from like these out of the Cold War, these neo-colonial societies and countries where it's just like, oh, you're still maintaining those fucked up power dynamics between the working class, the wealthy class in the United States or whatever colonial power, France, Britain, whatever, whoever.
It is diabolically genius. In that, like, you've got all these nations like Vietnam and Cuba and Indonesia and the Congo, just the ones we've covered. But they're all throwing off their colonial chain, saying we don't fuck with the French, the Dutch, the Belgians, the fucking Spanish anymore. We're done with that shit. We're gonna assert our own autonomy. And then the U.S., I think this starts under FDR, which is why I'm not like full-fledged committed to him. Of FDR's kind of acknowledging like, we did the same thing. We fuck with that. We also rebelled against our colonial oppressors. Let's support these movements. But I don't think, initially, of course, I don't think FDR was 100% honest in supporting that shift, because I think he recognized by supporting independence movements, he was robbing all of these other Western nations, which you can think of as competitors, of their colonies. And he's like, no, the name of the game has changed. Like, why would you want a colony? A colony seems expensive. You got to station a whole government infrastructure over there. You've got all of these programs that you have to support. They're gonna rebel every once in a while. You're gonna have to send the army out there. Like, that's expensive. If we just get the right guy in power, we can make him sign all of these economic agreements that basically give us all of the benefits of colonialism without any of the pitfalls associated with maintenance. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's a good dynamic. Yeah. No, you're right. I particularly when you look at like Africa and like understanding like, oh yeah, like basically I want to do more looking into this and kind of understanding like the French political dynamic of like the Cold War, because it basically seems like what happens is they get their ass kicked in fucking in Vietnam, and they're like, all
Yeah.
right, we don't want to do that again. So what
No.
can we do? And you in these and then they go to Algeria, and Algeria it's its own thing. But then they start to look at Africa and they're like, all right, we don't want to fight wars like this everywhere, and they're having their own burgeoning independence movement. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna do like, you guys can all become part of the French Union, and and as part of the French Union, we get to manage. You get freedom and independence, and you get to have your own flag. But
you get to vote. Fuck yeah.
Yeah, you get to do all that, but we get to control your coffers, all the money, the coffers, allow your foreign like policy, all that stuff is going to be managed through us, and we kind of keep these kind of neo-colonial agreements and stuff like that. And that's a lot of what has like handicapped Africa, a lot of Africa.
Yeah.
To talk about like other countries, not Francophile countries, you can talk about countries that the U.S. is more involved in Africa. It's a lot of like that. People take IMF money, and IMF money has all these strings attached to it that says, "Hey, you need to open up all your markets for the world, and you need to pay your workers less, and kind of get rid of social programs, and and that ruins the country." But does the country make money?
Economy.
Yeah, the local economy gets ruined, but the does it make money? It makes money for certain people.
Yeah.
And it's kind of getting these people in these debt agreements that they're never really going to get out of, and they're never going to pay off.
And what's interesting to me is that those don't even happen, or those happen on an international scale, but they also happen on an interpersonal scale. Of everybody's just trying to get somebody else into some debt agreement. Like I just think about student loans. It's the same thing with like a underdeveloped nation, aka a dumb 18-year-old takes out a massive development loan, aka a student loan. And, they take this loan out with the understanding that they're going to further the nation or themselves without keeping in mind all of the money that they will owe. And it's a way to keep somebody, a nation or an individual, permanently impoverished and permanently working off a debt that they cannot repay because they don't have the means to do so. Like,
so I mean, I don't think that's particularly a new strategy. I think you can go back and you can look at
modern,
you can look at Haiti and Haitian independence, and one reason why the Haitian economy or thing has never the Haitian project has never really taken off is because the French basically were threatening to invade after they became independent, and they were like, hey, and they're like, okay, well, you guys can sign an agreement to where you guys will pay us back for all the land that the owners lost, like that the owners lost in your slave and independence rebellion, or captured people from rebellion. And that agreement was so much money that they like still are struggling to pay that shit off today.
Damn.
Like, okay. So like,
wow.
So
the roots
that's
are
18
there.
That's 1800. That's 1803, the 1810s, you know what I mean? Like that, stuff like that. So I think what happens is they see it all across the world, and they're like, okay, what do people really want? Because a lot of these like a lot of these communist rebellions that they're like, oh, talking to you about, like, oh man, there's these people are so communist. They're not really that communist from what I've read. They're mostly just nationalists who, as Ho Chi Minh was like, look, I was the nationalist, but the Soviet Union was a friend in need, and it was a friend indeed. So so they were there
when we needed them.
And they were willing to support the independence struggle. So let's just cut it off, and let's just cut it off, and let's fucking just, you guys can be independent, you can have all that stuff, but we're still going to maintain what we really want.
We're still going to have control over what matters. And I guess the thing with all that is that you need a willing participant. Like, if you've been listening to the whole series, you need a Suharto.
To
where you look at communism broadly, and just taking Indonesia as an example, Sukarno, he wants high tariffs. He wants to protect the country. He's like, our resources are our own. We want autonomy. And it's like, none of that is good for Western multinationals. So we're going to label you as a communist and then depose you and put our own guy in power who we know is willing to sell his country to us. And that's fine. You know, that's just, and it's like part of the global upset over communism is, it's like you were talking about before, of that's almost like a buzzword to where they're not actually communist. They're just willing to do what is best for the nation. Like just the cases that we touched on, albeit briefly, like Iran, you got Mossadegh, who's arguably saying the same thing, to where he steps in as prime minister and he's like, no, our resources are our own. We need to get these foreign companies out of here because they're going to suck us dry and prevent us from actually developing. Guatemala with Arbenz is the same thing. Like, we need to take back the land, give it to people who are actually going to use it, which upsets United Fruit. Democratic Republic of the Congo, to where he kind of, I guess Patrice like becomes radicalized, to where, again, like we covered on it, he wasn't fully socialist or fully communist initially. He was just like, no, we need to do what's best for us. Same thing in Indonesia.
If you kind of read like you kind of read about Patrice, and like you start to get to where you start to read about how he was organizing. They were not organizing labor at all. They weren't talking about labor. They weren't that the people were talking about that. When the people would have their complaints about what they actually wanted, it was a lot of wage stuff, work treatment, like stuff like that. Whereas Patrice and them were more on the independence kick, and he particularly I think when he visits Belgium in the 50s, he's late 50s, he's like socialism is more of their thing. He's not even there. But I mean, it's I think it's definitely more about the resources and people slapping that label on you. If we're gonna again talk about the capitalist kind of malaise of thing, and how they kind of manifested what is the neocolonial environment. I think we also need to talk about just how in communist societies, a lot of times it just didn't turn out the way that it would envisioned. And I think that's often because they go too fast. I think because it seems like the leaps are where the pain happens. Like once the leaps are done, it kind of goes well from after, not well, but like it does all right. Like it's not as painful, but you
get
jumps
growing pains, and then it works out.
Because you're breaking apart like supply chains, and you have to figure out a new way to do everything. But I mean, I think particularly like there's a rush to get to that like not equal. I'm trying to think of the right word.
Utopia now.
Dystopian, like not dystopian. That's the opposite. Equal, like everybody has the same amount of land, or everybody's equal, and getting rid of those hierarchies. There's a rush to get to it. But like even most places didn't do that. Like, I mean, like Lenin's Russia is a very complex society that kept and like had a lot of those kind of things. But then when you push to get to the thing that you're actually talking about, then I feel like that's where it goes sideways. And I would always say
when you push too fast.
Like with Ho Chi Minh, he was big about like be like, hey, show people the fruits of this type of society first, and then let's go. But don't just go straight to it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, show them that we can. Show them the fruits of the independence.
You're gonna fuck it up.
That
was the. We didn't really talk about them, but in college I learned about like Russia in the 20s and the NEP, the New Economic Program. In Russia in the 20s. And there was this guy Bukharin, Nikolai Bukharin. Nikolai Bukharin. He was one of Stalin's rivals, and Stalin was all about like, nah, man, we just need to do it. We just need to get to that communist utopia as fast as possible. And Bukharin was kind of more toward the right, because he was like, nah, man, the NEP, this hybrid model between capitalism and communism seems to be working.
Yeah.
Like, we just need to chill in the NEP for a little bit longer. And then once the supply lines have solidified themselves, and once we've got a more firmer grasp on what we're doing, then we can kind of make the transition in its own time.
Yeah.
But Stalin kind of, and this is like all counterfactual to where it's kind of weird to say, or it's, you can't validate me saying if Russia in the 20s would have chilled in NEP for a little longer, they would have been able to transition, because there's no way to prove that.
There's no way to prove that.
But it did kind of fuck up. There was a major problems whenever Stalin decided, no, we're just gonna fucking full tilt do it, and they collapsed ultimately.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. It's definitely when the land reforms start kicking in, that's when you see the massive pain.
It's one of its problems.
What somebody would say would be like, well, there were those pains, but then you take Russia from like kind of a backwoods country to like, not backwoods, but like not the dynamic engine that Soviet communism made it within a span of what? I mean, if we're going to go from the 20s to the 60s, with 40 years?
Yeah.
Like a world power.
Yeah.
That's like that number 2 world power. You can say the same thing for China, like, oh, the Great Leap, like, I failed. But those kind of practices
it got it into its modern form.
I mean, kind of beginning of getting into its modern form, like its Andrew Jackson phase, kind of that society is one of the biggest, if not the biggest economy in the world. My only thing about that would be like, then people kind of dismissing like, oh, the dead bodies because of like what happened with like how many, like, oh, we did all this economic stuff, but then like a bunch of people got killed, and saying, well, the progress is worth that.
Worth all those. The ends justify the means.
Yeah, the ends.
Like, do they though? Like,
no, I mean, if the ends justify the means, it's just like, all right, then capitalism justifies its means.
What if? Yeah.
Like
it goes both ways.
You can always, you want to play that game, then
point.
that. I mean, I think
you open up a whole can of worms that you don't want to.
I think it's not about the necessarily as firm about like I'm not as firm about like, oh, though, is you gotta do it this way or do it that way. I would want people to have something that I want their human rights to be secure. And that's food, water, shelter. You know what I mean? Healthcare, college, and education for me. Those, like, and there's a couple more, but like those things need to be secure. And if we can like do that through a communist method, all right, well, if we can do that through like a leftist method, whatever, communist method, socialist method, whatever,
without millions of dead people,
without millions of dead people, like, I don't want to show them the fruits.
We should do it, for real.
So
another
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Another thing that we kind of saw case by case is just how the U.S. operates, like our modus operandi. And what if we're trying to depose somebody that we've labeled as a communist, which is more or less a buzzword when you actually look at it. It's not until in some cases, it's not until they are either called a communist or they have attempts on their life because they're supposedly a communist that they begin to enact, and they're like, okay, you know what? Maybe I fucking am. But like, how did we operate in the third world during the Cold War? Like, what is our step-by-step plan to overthrow people we label as enemies of capitalism?
The way you do that is you send a bad comedian down there.
Larry the Cable Guy.
Yeah, you send Larry the Cable Guy down there, and he gets everything right wing pumped up. And then people they just watch Fox News all day, and then that's how it happens.
They just soak it all into the fucking nooks and crannies of their brain, get drunk, lay in front of the television, and listen to these guys speak. And they become radicalized.
You know what I mean? Like, look, that's how it happens. So I think you kind of we talked about it before. Like the way it kind of happens is media operations from the right. The CIA MO is that they use media operations from the right. They demonize the left, like overstate it's like the threat. Say this is the biggest threat to your livelihood, your survival, and then there's an exciting incident that causes protest, and the protest gives the pretext for like the military to come in and rise up and either take power or back right-wing politicians.
And it's infallible.
Yeah.
Thus far. Like it worked in Indonesia. It worked in Chile.
Because you don't know.
It worked in Brazil. And like naturally, if you're the US and you're trying to fight communism, which is associated with the left, there's a natural alliance that like, okay, they're on the left. We need to align ourselves with the right. And so there's a natural marriage between the two. And then you get in their newspapers, you start like you said, puffing up that threat of like, oh, well, the socialists are coming for your guns, or the socialists are coming for their kids.
No, you don't know when this happens. You don't fucking know, and you're just jerking off, right? And then all of a sudden, somebody in the news is just like, "Yo, somebody's coming for your kids." It's like, what? And then you finish all the time. But then you get scared.
You get a little fearful, and you're like, you can only listen to us. We're the ones that know best. We're the one channel that's going to tell you how it is. And I get what scares me, is that there's this arrogance, if you want to think of it like that, to where the right always pretends to know what the left is or the positions of the left better than the left itself. It's like, no, you can't trust those dirty leftists. It's like Contreras in the School of the Americas episode we were talking about, to where it's like you can be a communist and not know it. It's like you have to trust us to tell you who the communists are. And it's like, well, why wouldn't I get it from them?
And was that RB Son?
No, it was Contreras.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I would disagree in the fact that they know full well what the positions of the left are, but they're framing it's the thing where you frame the enemy, like you frame
misrepresenting their positions. Yeah,
it's the same thing.
Pursuing your own agenda. Yeah,
you go against. You want to, and also you want to like project that the left is this. So you'll say that their leaders are this or their people are this. Like everybody says, like the most radical. Like you watch Fox News, the most radical person in the country is Nancy Pelosi. It's not that radical. Like
not really.
You don't want to talk about the other people who are like. They
more
actually
radical.
like okay.
Like you understand we have full-fledged Maoists in America right now.
You don't want to talk
on
about
Twitter, and Nancy Pelosi is radical.
No, I guess
maybe she's prominent. I don't know.
I would say you want to talk about like a AOC or like a Bernie as like the actual left, because then they're gonna start. Once people start to like be like. You start talking about what they actually want and like their actual things and talk about their actual policies and how these are bad. People are going to go, wait, but those things might help me. You're going to talk. You're going to frame the left as somebody that's kind of like a weird, like kind of like, oh, that person doesn't do a lot to help me and has this and this and this and this.
Yeah.
They're creating the battlefield. You're creating your enemy.
It's treating the entire left as though it's all the same thing, as though it's a monolith, to where it's like Nancy Pelosi is Joe Biden. Joe Biden is Antifa. Antifa is Stalin. And they're all the same thing. And there are no shades. There's no nuance. There's no difference in what they believe or their opinions. True. They're all Stalin. And they're all socialists. And so you see this reemergence or this abuse of the term that radicalizes people. And what's so scary about that MO that we laid out is that you're seeing it in America right now. Like
this is the thing. When you say seeing it, it's happening. But I would say it's been happening. I think it's something you could look at since the 80s. It's been happening. It's just now it's at a zenith point, and it's at an incredibly high point. But then, it's and that has a lot to do. That is a subject that we don't have time to cover, because if you go all the way down that rabbit hole, we have to talk about cable communications acts from the 1980s. Because that's a lot of it. It's just like, now you have cable news that can constantly be on. Like what's the broadcasting corporate, like the more like
FCC.
rules about FCC, the rules about how much time you have to give to opposing thoughts about issues, and like that was a rule. You had to give equal time to like equal. But that's too much. We don't have time for that.
No. Like, I guess to round it out is we've talked a lot about the fucked up shit that the U.S. has done during the Cold War. We've sponsored coups.
Yeah.
We've co-signed concentration camps.
Yeah.
We've kept millions, if not billions, of people in poverty by extracting all of the resources that a nation was supposed to have, but they went ahead and signed a development contract that said that we get all that, or a joint mining venture that says that we get all those resources because we're the only ones who can process them. We've engaged in biological warfare. Like, is the U.S. an evil empire?
But you gonna go first on that? You want me to go first?
You can go ahead.
Okay. In that, like in that, you can.
If you look at all that, then
no, I mean, it's you these. I mean, it's a lot of predatory agreements, a lot of predatory stuff going on as far as like exploiting working peoples across the world, and here. You know what I mean? So like, and it's in the people kind of talk about, we're bringing democracy, or we're bringing like a better way of life. And I would just go back to the Lumumba in the Congo. The reason we say we're bringing good things, but you go to like the Congo, the King Leopold, when he came, he said, he was like, we're taking over the Congo so we can stop slavery. That's the you know what I mean? But then institute something else that's equally, if not more, predatory. So that just because we're saying, we want to bring like freedom and all this stuff, it doesn't mean we're also bringing something equally as bad.
They're all like, fucking buzzwords of these ideas of you look at them in a group of freedom, democracy, and communism. Is they're actually much more complex than they're portrayed by whoever's spinning them or spouting them. Or if you look at if we're America, and according to Woodrow Wilson, we've got to like export democracy, and that's our number one export is democracy, and we're overthrowing these people because they just don't believe in democracy, and they're communist, and they're oppressing freedom or whatever. Just look at Chile. Allende was elected democratically. And we decided to overthrow a democratically elected leader because he wasn't democratic enough. That's insane.
No, I mean,
they're just buzzwords that are used to play on people's emotions. Like, this does make sense. When it's like, no, it all sounds good, but if you look at it under its face, it's bad.
No, it's I would say you go back to the School of America episode, and you kind of look at like when they're training them, they're like, okay, we can't use these here, but you can use those outside the country. Outside the country, there's only a certain amount of like freedom in the world that I think America cares about. We care about freedom here. Maybe in Western countries a little bit, but outside other places we don't care. And just the record shows that we don't care what they really want. We just don't. We're willing to back things back and put people in power who don't care. And like the byline of being like, any like a U.S. backed dictator is better than a non-U.S. aligned.
A democratically elected nationalist who won't support our neo-colonial agenda.
Because then
that's better for democracy. Like,
that flows back, I think, is because it's just. Then we're gonna have to like to fully understand how business and government work and like all this type of stuff, and like especially in America, if you're a politician, you're like, hey, maybe we shouldn't invade that country, and it's like, well, I'm the dude backing you, and I have an oil company, and you're fucking, we need to invade that country so I can like keep my profits the same way, and I'm supporting your campaign, you're probably going to back that invasion. And
kind of if you want to be reelected, you're going to invade that country.
Yeah, if you want to get knocked out in a primary by some fucking perfect candidate that just pops out of nowhere. No, yeah, it's
crowdfunded their whole campaign like some bum.
Yeah, no, I mean, not even crowd. They'll just come in, like, I know, especially on the Republican side, the Democratic side too. Just people will come in like out of nowhere and just like, oh, they're backed by pharma, and they want to get you out of there because you opposed some like coup in some weird country, not weird country,
stood
a
up
country
for what's right. And
yeah, no, like, that's how you lose elections in America, standing up for what's right. So what do you? So just kind of getting to the end of this and kind of like, what's the answer to like making the U.S. not an evil empire?
I just think I jump back to this. It's like where I'm at with my political thought is currently, I think the government's sole job, small government, right? Okay. Not in your business, not in the business of any one person. I think their job should be to ensure a equal playing field for all America. That way we've like revived the middle class, because you don't get the American dream without the middle class, because without the middle class, you have no class mobility to where they're really the facilitators between the lower class and the upper class. Like it's obvious, you know? I think the government's sole job should be to regulate corporations and make sure multinationals aren't doing this shit. And just like aren't doing this to our own citizens, and just ensuring a livable wage and providing good benefits and making sure that the price of any one good isn't too high simply because the company can pay that much. Like you look at the pharmaceutical industry in general, and just like they can afford, or they can get away with charging an exorbitant price for a drug because somebody needs that to live.
Well, then my argument would be, kind of playing devil's advocate would be like, well, okay, you want this middle class lifestyle, but this middle class lifestyle is directly dependent on the predatory arrangements that we have all across the world.
There's that too.
So,
like, I don't know if they're. I
it's
guess
directly dependent on that. Like the way we live,
it's not sustainable. And if you were, I guess, truly an ally of third world nations, you would renounce the American way of life entirely. I think there's a way to do it. Like, I read this article about why China is starting to emerge in Africa as like it's something that you kind of pointed me towards, of like how they are establishing such a strong foothold in Africa. And they're still kind of like a neocolonialist, if you want to think of it like that.
No, in every way
but they're giving
possible.
them better deals than we are, which is it's like I think the it's a short-term mindset that says that we need to exploit these nations. It's a long-term mindset, and it's better for the world generally, that at least I think, if they were to say, we need to cooperate with these nations, we need to work with these nations, not as profitable, but a lot less people are going to hate us and wish that we were overthrown X amount of years from then.
The China neocolonialist thing going in Africa is interesting, because it's like, they are giving a little better deals, and they're building a lot of infrastructure in Africa, but it's like there's a lot of talk right now about like record labels in hip hop and stuff, about like predatory agreements, like predatory contracts, and it's like the same thing of like, man, you go with these people, they're literally raping you. Like they're raping you, and over here they're gonna rape you, but they're gonna kiss you. Like, well, that's not what nobody wants, but at the same time, like, it's so But I just would argue, if you're going to go over the answer to this, I would say it's more. I would say it's more. It's kind of living up to what the actual. I don't. Okay, so let me go back. Not living up to the actual like what we talked about as far as like in the country, because we still talked about we had the Monroe Doctrine and all that type of stuff.
All
But
this
living
shit.
up to the principles and actually exporting principles that we talked about.
Yeah.
Actually exporting real, democracy for people. Actually wanting that, and if it goes against us, it goes against us. If it doesn't go against us, it doesn't go against us. But at the same time, and then
that's not as profitable.
It's not as profitable.
Which is the problem. It's like, again, with the regulation, I think we need campaign finance reform, because then you get less oil barons who can reelect a candidate or overthrow a candidate solely based on whether or not they will support an invasion in this third world country. Of the same shit of, we need money out of politics. But I don't know if you'll get it, which is that's the problem.
I mean, I think technically it would. I don't know how the Supreme Court's going to look, so I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's even feasible
up in the
anymore.
air right now.
I completely don't know if that's feasible anymore. But
for sure.
As far as like, I think the answer to the Cold War is kind of a moot point because it's over. But the answer to like the colonial question of like neocolonialism and understanding that issue is that. I just think it's about actually exploring the principles that we actually talk about. But and there's a lot more. If you're like a small country, don't take money from the IMF.
No,
find different sources.
They're gonna fuck you over. But honestly, they'll probably kill you because you didn't, and then appoint somebody who will take money from the IMF.
Because that's
whatever.
Because the IMF IMF, you take their money, and then they're like, hey, just back the same kind of exploitive practices, and kind of export all the money out of the country. And that's
the guy you overthrew. Just do what he did, and you'll be fine.
You'll be fine. It's not about raising wages in Africa and stuff like that.
And this is also like, what's the answer? Who are we? We're two douchebags with microphones that read a bunch of shit. But this is what I've arrived at, and I hope you're at least thinking about these things.
Yeah, vote. I mean, look, let's be honest. The American public doesn't vote based on foreign policy at all. No.
And it doesn't really change based on who's in the White House. This is just kind of
it's kind of a stagnant thing
to who we are as a nation, and just how we operate.
We're gonna be in your shit doing weird shit. That's what we're gonna be doing. Okay. Henry.
Woo.
Yeah. Well, that guys.
Happy stuff.
That's been the Cold War.
Yep.
It's been a fun time. Mm-hmm. We did a lot of talking.
A lot of dead bodies.
About bodies.
Of people died.
A lot of people died. It wasn't. It was. Sometimes we were funny. Sometimes we weren't.
We hit it sometimes, and we did not other times.
We hope that at least this could spark some like a thirst for more knowledge on the subjects, and and some, maybe you'll come back and you'll call us pussies and idiots who didn't know
what the fuck they were talking about. We'd love to hear from anybody. Yeah, for real. That'd be cool.
And that would be cool. And because we're always open to learning and kind of learning new things and being critiqued on what we do. From here, what's going to happen is we're taking on a new package, and Henry's super excited about it, so I'll let him tell you about it.
Woohoo! Yeah. All right. So through October, we're going to do spooky figures.
Okay.
Just some spooky weirdos you've never heard of, starting with next week, the inimitable Edgar Allan Poe.
Okay. Henry's idol. Henry's class idol.
Real
class crush, high school crush.
Weirdo. I'm gonna be real strange guy. Great writer, but kind of like quintessential alcoholic. Anyways, and we got some other spooky figures lined up for the rest of the month, and then we are going to launch into the American West.
Yeah.
With particularly, we're going to focus on like kind of the Native American struggle. We got 6 Native Americans that we're going to look up, like big names and just more history that they're about to write out. So if you want to know it,
yeah,
you know where to find us.
This ain't gonna be in the patriotic textbooks, baby boy and girl.
Not in those new textbooks,
not
man.
In the patriotic textbooks. You gotta come here. You gotta come here. Look, well, guys, we want to thank you for listening. We hope you follow us and you move from the Cold War on to spooky figures and on to the West. And we thank you for all of you people who have joined listening. It makes us feel good that people actually listen to our stuff. Please make more people listen. Please like, share, subscribe. You can find us on social media.
Listen, this is the first thing I've done that people have asked me to keep doing. You understand? You know how big that is for me?
Okay, that's a lot. That's a lot because we all asked them to stop living. I asked them to stop living today. But no. So, guys, you can find us on social media at Instagram at Joshua B. Stokes. Oh, shit. That's just me. All right, sorry. You can find us on Instagram at Hard for History. You can find us on Facebook at Hard for History. You can find us on Twitter at HFH Podcast. You can also find us on YouTube at Hard for History. Henry, what's your social media?
You can find me, Henry E. Price, on Instagram, and then just Henry Price on Facebook if you want more of my bullshit, man.
Yeah, it's
all
bullshit.
About it. All right? it keeps coming. All right.
You could find me at Joshua B. Stokes on Instagram and Twitter, and Joshua Stokes on Facebook. Guys, give us again likes, share, subscribe. Please tell your friends about us. Please tell your mom that we're cool. And guys, we'll see you next time. And we're diving into spooky figures. Edgar Allan Poe. Thank you guys. Love you. Bye. Spirit fingers. I'm spirit fingering right now. Yeah.
You can't hear them. I wish you could hear the spirit.
No, that's the spirit. They can hear the spirit.
Maybe if you did it hard enough.
Bye, guys.
You rub your fingers close enough together.
No, we're done. We're leaving. We're stopping. All right.